Let's go.
Welcome to the Soul Fam podcast, where we expand your personal universe. I'm Diana Marquetta, and in each episode, Soul Fam co-founder, co-creator Lexi Sturmer-Solden and I interview the world's most rising and longtime experts in consciousness, spirituality, entertainment, healing, and science. From Earth's dimensions and dimensions way, way beyond. On the Soul Fam podcast, our frequencies are high and your heart chakras will open as these powerful voices of today share cutting-edge research, profound experiences, and valuable knowledge for your world in this out-of-this-world, thought-provoking, envelope-pushing interviews that could only take place right here on the Soul Fam podcast.
Others. And at that point, it was just a focus on myself. I wanted to change what was going on in my own life. And upon upon some of the discoveries, I began to see that it wasn't just me that needed it, and that there are others that could utilize some of the things I've discovered. So I began to build on it.
At the time, were you working on a startup? Were you working independently? I seem to recall some stories about that, and I was curious if that was part of the inspiration that you were looking for some more force behind your creations.
Yeah, happy to share that. So I was working on a startup, had nothing to do with the mine or anything. It was a battery e-commerce company, and I had experienced a big plateau, me and my co-founder, and I felt like it was my mind that caused the plateau, because everything begins in the mind. And I remember my co-founder said, no, you just got to work harder, work more hours. And that wasn't necessarily the case, because, I mean, frankly, we worked too much already. And it wasn't the hours we put in, but it was what we could put in during those hours. And I felt like my mind was the cause of our plateau. So I went out to seek for trainings. And one of the first trainings I found was actually in the topic of NLP, which became later on 5 to 10% of the foundation of what we have built in Upgrade. So Upgrade's roughly 5 to 10% NLP. And the very first training I took was in NLP.
So did you find that to be helpful? And then did you sort of, expand from there?
Yeah, so it was helpful. The version I learned in terms of NLP, it was extremely helpful, actually. It completely changed my life. It's something that you'll find true in many, many methodologies, that there are some that are really good at what they do, and there are some that are not as good, right? Mm-hmm. And they can both leverage the same label, like NLP, mm-hmm. But then you'll find people that literally went and watched a YouTube video and call themselves a practitioner. And then there'll be those who have spent decades perfecting the art and science. And so I was very blessed and fortunate to have learned from one of those experts who have spent decades perfecting the art and science behind it. And during that, I was asked the question, what's the one thing when you achieve will make this the greatest training of all times? And I said, I want to find true love, or the one relationship, the one, right? And they said, when? And I told them, 5 months. And I was single at the time, and I thought, if this could work in 5 months, I can apply it in all other areas of life. And that was also around the time when I began to realize it's not just how much time it takes, it's about what you do during that time too. So I said 5 months, and 4 months and 3 weeks later, I was engaged.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Wait, can I ask why 5? Now. Yeah, wait. So many questions. First of all, congrats. Congratulations. That's amazing. Why 5 months? Like, is 5, are you like, well, it's not 6 months. I got to go less than 6.
So what happened was the year before I set a goal for August 31st, and it completely failed the goal. Nothing happened. Did go on a bunch of dates, but nothing happened. So that year I was like, well, I'm going to repeat that goal. And it was around March. So I was like, how about in 5 months? That, August 31st.
Oh, wait a minute. You started at the beginning of the old calendar that starts in March with Aries. So we just had the spring equinox. So you started when there was a lot of momentum, and then you reaped the benefits during the harvest season.
That's a great explanation.
Can I ask?
I like that.
Can I ask NLP? I don't.
I can sense we're going to be great friends. I really like your energy, by the way, like both of you. Oh. There's something about you guys that's very, very nice. Oh,
thank you.
Keep going.
We like you a lot too.
Thank you.
I don't. I'm at a place where I can just say, I don't know what NLP is. Is there like a bullet point or just a short-ish definition for somebody who's having a hard time wrapping their brain around what exactly it is?
Yeah. So initially, I'll give you a slightly longer version of it, takes about a minute, and then I'll give you the more, condensed version. So it started as a university project in a sense. A couple of guys began to research what if we could program the human mind using human language. And then they began to realize, wait a second, you can absolutely do that. And then supposedly, rumor says it turned into a black budget special project inside the government. And I don't know all the details. You can ask David Morehouse about it. He's also seen it during his time when he was in the government. And but I'm not surprised because it's an extremely effective tool that allows you to literally use language and anything that associates with it to reprogram the human experience and reshape perception, reshape behavior. And it's extremely effective.
Would that include symbols as well?
So language essentially is a symbol, right? However, if we're talking about visual symbols or auditory symbols, we can certainly use any symbol that has meanings to the human psyche.
So how did that work with romance?
Oh, for me or just in general?
In general. Or both. We want all the deets.
So lots of time, I'll answer it in 3 ways. The first is lots of time people have no idea what they're looking for. If you ask them what they want, they'll tell you what they don't want. And so what saturates our mind is what our mind will execute on. If you find someone who's looking for the one and they tell you what they don't want, because that's what they have saturating their mind with, you can almost predict that they're likely going to run into that person they don't want. And that's why you meet people that they can move across the country and still end up dating the same people they complained about before, because their mind is filtering, right? And what happens during this filtering process is that we literally have about 10 to 20 million bits of information that comes into our mind per second. That's a lot of data. But we filter it down to roughly 126 bits. And so majority, I'd say 99.99% of the data gets filtered out. Well, then how do we choose what gets filtered into our reality, right? Because that 126 bits is our reality. And that's actually based on our filters, which are made up of our memories, our language, our beliefs, our values, our identity, and a number of other things, which can all be programmed or reprogrammed. And so when it comes to reprogramming the mind, if you can reprogram those things, you can then reprogram the filter, which adjusts what out of those 10 to 20 million bits of data coming through, the 126 bit is what you end up wanting. Think of it like this. If you get on social media, likely content are adjusted to your desires or what you previously viewed. If someone is constantly looking at cars, they're going to get recommendations of cars, new cars, old cars, all that stuff. If someone's constantly looking at violence, they're going to see violent videos. And so when it comes to dating and romance, if someone's looking for unconsciously, because nobody's doing this consciously, people aren't trying to get themselves in trouble consciously. They still want the dopamine, the oxytocin. They still want all that, but their mind may have been used to and previously been filtering out all the good things and what they don't what they don't want ends up being filtered in. My long answer is the first principle is people don't know what they want. So they end up getting what they spend most of their time saturating their mind with. So the trick is to design what you want. And when it comes to romantic relationships, I always recommend 80 to 100 attributes prioritized. That being said, the reason is if it's not specific enough, the mind won't know when you find the person. If it gets too specific, over 100 attributes, then they get their mind will filter out the good options, and they'll say, oh no, that's not good enough. So I recommend 80 to 100 after many tests that we ran. And we've seen this work a lot of times when people do that 80 to 100 attributes. And then number 2, if I may keep going, please, unless you have some questions. Yeah. Number 2 would be resolution. So once you've designed and you know what you want, oftentimes we will have past memories that justifies how we couldn't have what we want. Our past memories will say, oh, I dated this person. Men or women aren't this way. They can't be that good. They can't be that nice. That person doesn't exist. The problem is that person does exist, but if we have not resolved and learned the lessons from the past, our mind will continue to repeat that lesson. And so the filter doesn't get adjusted. Mm. So it's always not only recommended, it's basically mandatory. If you want to design a new reality, whether it's romance or any other relationships, you'll want the next step to be resolution by learning from the relationships of the past. And a good indicator of what to learn from is anything you feel emotional charge towards. Now, someone might say, that's not my responsibility to release my negative emotions, to forgive those who've done wrong or those who are not a good fit for me. The truth is it is, right? They're not going to feel anything. Like, I remember talking to my mom. There was a time when I was younger, I remember she used to get offended by what some of our relatives says. And I'm like, Mom, you're being angry, but they're not feeling your anger. They're not feeling your pain. You're suffering for no reason, literally. And then later on, as I began to build Upgrade, I learned that emotions are a message delivery mechanism. So it's like your notification on your phone. The notification is not going away until you actually got the message, but you have to learn how to decipher the message. So the emotions that we have, whether it's negative or positive, it's delivering a message. So once we resolve that, that's really what resolution is. Once we get the message, we resolve it. And then no longer will that notification keeps bothering us. And so finally, right, once you have designed and you've resolved any limitations or old beliefs or old negative emotions, the final step is that you'll notice taking action is really simple, but you still got to take action. The one key thing is a lot of people take action without step 2 or without step 1. So they end up having to compensate with physical effort what they didn't do in their mind or spiritually, right? But if you have done step 1 and step 2, step 3 is you're just needing to keep yourself accountable, go through it, and it will be a journey full of pleasure rather than pain. But if someone hasn't done step 1 or 2, it's a journey of pain because oftentimes they have to face the mirror even when if they didn't resolve their emotions, they're going to have to face their mirror when they're taking action. And that slows things down.
That makes a lot of sense. So say that again, because I feel like our emotions also carry a certain kind of energy with them. And part of what we do at the Soul Fan podcast is figure out how to deal with ourselves and even our ancestral sort of histories, traumas, that sort of thing. It feels like it becomes an innate part of ourselves. So that emotion is more than just a message. It feels as though it has some physicality to it.
Oh, certainly. The emotion itself is not a message. It's the message delivery mechanism.
Okay.
So the intensity that it carries sets a certain priority. It also gives you the awareness that, hey, maybe it's been around for a while. It's time to resolve it. So certainly there's physicality to it, because emotions is the closest thing between I would say it's a bridge between our mind and the physical actions we take. Mm. The emotions are a great predictor of what we'll do in terms of our behavior. So if we notice we feel something, even when we think, oh yeah, I forgave so-and-so, or I've let that go a long time ago, but if they still get triggered, that indicates they haven't. And it also indicates they likely would take action that is contrary to the best intention and or best outcome.
So was part of your romance seeking, and I'm going to just go out on a limb here and say this probably is probably the application to use for attaining anything, any sort of goal. So in your...
Yeah, that's a brilliant. Yep. Keep going.
Was in your 5 months that you gave yourself to reach this goal, was this a lot of personal gardening, a lot of personal sort of uncovering and then realigning yourself? How did that work for you?
Yeah, basically repeating those 3 steps. So I would design, and then I would go and resolve anything that makes me feel like I'm not deserving of this person that I designed, and or any thoughts that would come to mind that cause me to feel fear or sadness or anger or guilt or anything, and I'd resolve them. And then over time, we developed these tools that have become very, very effective and efficient. Because in the beginning, when I was doing resolution, based on what I learned in NLP, it would take hours, which is still really fast compared to traditional methods. But I've gotten it down in Upgrade now, down to the minutes or seconds for resolution. So it allows you to resolve hundreds, if not thousands, within a week or even a day. And then I would take action. And then I would go back and refine my design. What's interesting, though, was my first design, the same day that I finished the design, the first iteration, my fiance had broken up with her. She was engaged. So the lady that I hadn't met at the time broke up with her fiance, which I thought, this is interesting timing.
Had you met?
No, I hadn't met her when I designed her.
In reflection, the synchronicity was that she was actually breaking up with her fiance at the time as you were designing her, so to speak.
Yes. And, it brought me to suspect, which I later on, one of the things is, we like to verify what we do. But anyway, back then I began to suspect, I'm like, if your design is strong and powerful enough, think of it like a light bulb. 100-watt light bulb is not that bright. It's bright, but it's not that bright. But if you put it into a laser, it can cut through, some say, a lot of things, right? Cut through glass, cut through wall. Why? Because it's a concentrated energy, just like our focus. Oftentimes, we don't have a strong enough design of what we want. We can't leverage our mental energy to create. And that's why we compensate it with physical action, which can be tiring. But the human being exists beyond just the physical. Why would we only leverage our physical force?
So it's that our focus, our intention, and our focus has a sort of laser-like quality that we don't necessarily want to believe. I mean, we'd rather work 80 hours a week and suffer than just take 5 minutes to laser focus on something. Am I simplifying that too much?
No, it's perfect. Yeah, that's how important it is to realize our mind is so powerful. And those who don't know their minds are powerful is doing exactly what you just described. They are not laser focusing their mental faculties. So they are looking at the light bulb and saying, it's not that powerful.
Or we're looking at a lot of light bulbs and not really sure which one to turn on. So,
yeah.
To give us some more details about this romance. So, because we love this. This is a huge hook for us, and all of our listeners will love, oh, really? This is how it works. Was it a painful experience for you? Was it a cleansing experience for you to go through this process? Did it open you up to new other things?
And then one question, were you just like on the astral plane designing? That's how I picture you, just like designing with all the astral light, putting it together in the fabric of the
I'll give you specific details of what happened. So I actually began with a spreadsheet.
Love it.
Yes, that's so good though. Some people think in spreadsheets. That's amazing.
And, coming from an engineering background, I was like, I need this to be repeatable. Oh. So I put on a spreadsheet, rows and columns. The columns had to do with the different areas: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, hobbies, lifestyle, where they like to travel, food, health, practically anything I could think of. And then the roles had to do with what's most important in each of the categories. And at the top would be the most important ones. The bottom would be more like nice to have, but not necessary. And I wrote 83 attributes. They were all prioritized. And even the columns were prioritized. Which area of their life are the most important? And I designed so specifically that it would almost be, people would look at it and be like, wow, do you really want to be that nitpicky? Do you really want to know for example, I designed the shape of her nose, and I designed I knew what kind of, we talked about, actually, what specifically I put down was her height. I wrote down 5'5" to 5'7" or 5'8", and it's funny because when we first got married, she was about 5'6" or so, and then after she got pregnant twice, she became 5'7.5", which I was like, "Well, this is interesting." She grew taller, and so she's literally inside that height range. Eye color, I designed that she likes sushi, and like everything that I designed, I monitor what I designed. And the more you care about your design, the less physical effort there is. It wasn't a painful experience. It was a stretching experience, cleansing experience for sure, because it causes me to have to realize anything that would prevent me from finding the one has to be brought up and resolved. Any insecurity, any of that.
I've got two questions. The first, yes. Has she seen the spreadsheet? Is she like,
oh yeah.
Oh, she said, okay, good. And then the second question was, so are these filters our programs that we call like our coping mechanism, or whatever strategies that we had to learn or think we had to learn to survive? Is that what the filters are? There's just a way that a lens that we're seeing the world through. Is that mentally what we're like fixing?
Think of it like Google. When you get on Google, if you type in, I want a house, it'll give you billions of results, right? If you type in a modern home on the coast, 4 bedrooms, 4.5 bath, built after 2022 and price under a certain amount, all of a sudden you get like 5 outcomes. The problem with our mind is that it's not incapable of finding whatever you want. It's that we most of the time as humans never gave it specific enough instructions of what we're looking for to filter out everything we don't want. And so, and more often than not, we know what we don't want more than what we know what we want. And so we end up filtering in what we don't want because we're so focused on it.
So when I think I don't want to foster another stray cat, and here is Sir Cloverton on my porch, ready to come inside. Is that how it works?
Yeah, because it's like, don't think of a pink elephant. You have to think about it. So language is just a symbol or a label of our visual, auditory, kinesthetic, smell, and taste. So if you're like, I don't want this, but your visual in your mind, you're focusing on what you don't want, then you're already causing your mind to begin to saturate with that thought, right? And however, if you are very careful and begin to train your mind to actually replace that thought with something else that you want, then you can avoid that.
Is it a mind trick? Is this a little Jedi mind tricking?
Which part?
All of it. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that Gucci bag.
I mean, it's interesting that statement. It's like, I don't want to get married. Someone will end up finding themselves in a situation where that might occur, right? But then a lot of people in sales will use that and say, hey, don't think about buying this today. And the customer will think about buying it today.
Interesting.
And now a really good ecological usage of this is in a family situation or in a romantic or even a friendship, any relationship, you could say, hey, I don't want you to just simply forgive. However, I do want you to think about all the benefits. And so you're basically giving them you're not asking them to forgive, or you're not asking them to think about all the, all the things they can do to let it go. But then that's what they're thinking about. But it reduces, if not removes, resistance to the idea of forgiveness or anything you want. Right?
Fascinating.
Our listeners could be on a date and they can speak their mind without causing, without feeling like they're being too straightforward. They can say, hey, look, if we were to fall in love, I'm not expecting us to do that, but I'm just saying if we were to, then they can actually bypass the critical side of the mind and actually suspend any disbelief and go to that place where if they were to fall in love with their date, what could happen, right? They can begin to point out scenarios without sounding weird or too straightforward. Right. So many ways to use it.
Just like, every time we go on one of these what ifs, do we create another world? Are we creating another timeline? If I'm like, I'm not saying this is possible, but what if there were a case in which Diane and I started the Soul Fam farm community, and we had all sorts of therapy animals and that kind of. Did I just start a timeline, or did we just did we just create a timeline where that could happen?
So based on my understanding, this is just an understanding, not exactly, I'm not going to say it's the truth or not. It's just an interpretation. Yeah.
Fair enough.
If there's not sufficient time or energy that's being inputted into the creation of this idea, it will typically just wither away. So that's why every one of our imaginations don't come true. Thank goodness.
Thank God. Oh my God. Can you imagine some of the terrifying alien invasion, just weird, I don't even know what, 3 suns? And no, that you're right. Thank God they all don't come true. And that is such a relief, William.
Yeah. And that's partly what the journey is for humankind, right? For a human to become more and more, just like my discussion yesterday with my rabbi friend, for humans to become more divine and closer to the creator, they have to begin to be able to, creator, indicating that they can create, right? They can speak, and therefore this thing exists. For humans to become a creator, they have to learn all these lessons so they can fine tune their energy so they can create without effort. Right now we're creating with effort because that effort in and of itself is a filtering device that reduces any unintentional and or chaotic or even harmful creations to come about.
That makes so much sense.
Okay, this is fascinating. So I want to jump ahead to something that I have a question about, William, and that is if we are creating worlds, if we are in if we effectively have allowed mankind to change their mind programming, is there a place where you would like to see us go, or is there an area you would like to work in with Upgrade to resolve some of the issues that are currently facing our planet?
Yeah, so our mission in Upgrade there are 3 phases. And first off, just an underlying frame about these missions is we don't expect anyone to be perfect. I have observed all of the perceivable things that have occurred. Judgment is a huge thing. right? People tend to judge themselves and or others. So our upgrade mission is a non-judgmental mission. And so first off, that's an important frame. But there are 3 phases. Phase 1 is we want to upgrade the planet. Because right now, let's imagine for a moment, let's say we're aliens and we're flying past the Earth and we're looking at Earth and we would look at each other and say, let's not go down there. That's greedy. That place is full of greedy and warfaring people. And that's too dangerous. We're not going down there. And we just go on to other places. So this planet currently is not an ideal environment for any superbly advanced intelligence to come down and do commerce and or share their knowledge that may or may not be millions, if not billions of years ahead. Because to them, in my perception, we are still a young infant civilization that has much to learn and to be able to let go of the warfaring and greedy nature. So the goal in phase 1 is to upgrade the planet to a point where it's harmonious and abundant without wars and without greed, and a place that's suitable for advanced civilizations that are far ahead of us to be able to come and say, oh, I want to share. Phase 2 would be welcoming, benevolent civilizations to come and share information and commerce with us and technology. So we can further upgrade with minimal, trial and error, because then we can learn lessons that other civilizations have spent millions of years learning. Then phase 3 is we package this information, we go and upgrade other planets. So that's kind of the crazy vision, but I do think that it's not only doable, it's frankly needed.
For sure.
Can we get out of our own way, though? I mean, Diane and I, we're obviously just aliens in human form, living boring lives. But let's say humankind was able to get out of our own way.
You guys don't sound boring at all.
Well, we're so boring. Like, we just, we don't have technology. We're just like on the farm petting Diana's horse.
That sounds like fun.
It is fun. It's the best. Oh my God. I completely forgot what I was saying. I don't know if it had anything to do with it.
We were talking about getting in our own ways, right? So how do we effectively do that as a community? Is that what you're suggesting?
One of the best things to do to get out of our own way is to get to know what we want better than what we don't want. Because what we don't want will get in our way. Therefore, we will get in our own way.
So how do you break this down and I think I'm understanding we're sort of taking a shortcut here, but as an engineer, you broke this down into pieces so that it's repeatable. It's something that can be done over and over. I can open that door over and over again because the knob functions a certain way. So it's easy for me to do it at this point.
Yes.
When it was first being invented, maybe it didn't work so well, but now it works perfectly. I can walk in and out of it 1,000 times without a thought. So this effectively is to change my mind or to change the mechanics of my brain so that I can break this down into little pieces so that it becomes normal to me in a sense. And the creation is immediate rather than 1,000 years.
Yeah. So one of the coolest things we discovered that allows us to repeat it and dramatically reduce the time frame it takes to create something we want is to get to know the very detail of what we want to create. Let me explain. If you guys have seen Mario Brothers, the video game back in the 90s, it's very, very pixelated. Mm-hmm. It was fun. People loved to play it, and it became a world classic. However, if you compare that to modern video games, it's night and day when it comes to realism. Now, oftentimes when we create what we want, it's too pixelated. And when it's pixelated, our mind doesn't perceive it to be real. And therefore, if your mind is an investor and it looks at the vision you create and it's like, oh, that's really pixelated, I have no idea what you're talking about, the investor likely will not invest the energy to create further. It's the same principle. If we can create a vision so real that our mind cannot distinguish it from what's real, then our mind will be, and especially when you couple that with rewards as well as incentivizing, outcomes, your mind will find them to be very enticing to invest energy into it. And so your mind, one of your mind's primary functions is to manage your energy, right, for the preservation of our life. And it can't just frivolously throw energy at everything. So if we look at a goal and we don't take action to it and we procrastinate, it actually has less to do with our natural desire to procrastinate. It has more to do with our mind not seeing it as a viable, truly realistic outcome. And so it gets to the point where, when we set a goal and then others and ourselves may say, oh, that's unrealistic. But really, what's unrealistic is simply what we don't have enough pixels for.
Oh, that's fabulous.
That makes a lot of sense, though. Yeah, your mind is managing your energy. I mean, that I wanted to say amen to that one. Because, if you only have so much bandwidth in a day. And that the part of you is like, well, I could spend 2.5 hours doing this. And then you project out, but what are the results going to really help me down the road? Or like, what do I actually have to do right now? I feel like in that way, the mind is helpful. But then again, some people might find that there's resistance to sort of, some of the new strategies, I guess. Are people uncomfortable at first with the new strategies?
People can be uncomfortable if it goes against their filter or their beliefs about reality. But the beauty is, if you design it in a way that's truly enticing, your mind will step out of its own way and say, I want this. And that was the very thing that happened for me at that time. I was like, okay, it's getting to a point where I really, my desire and the desired outcome, and the rewards associated was so much greater than any level of discomfort. I was like, I'm willing to do what it takes. One thing though, if your design is really, truly enticing, I'll repeat this, it makes your mind far more interested in doing it, and it will reduce the hard physical work that we have to do.
Oh, interesting.
Is that like the dopamine shortcut?
It can be a shortcut, and it's certainly a long-term dopamine reward, because as I was thinking about how I designed the one, because if I wasn't specific, I mean, think of it like this. Let's say someone wants to buy a new car, but all they know is I want to buy a new car. So if you ask them, are you motivated to get it or are you not? In their mind, it might just be a blob. It might just be a car that could look like anything. They likely will be less motivated for a general vision of a car. But if in their mind they have a very specific leather trim inside the car, or they have a very specific fuel gauge, a very specific type of seats that wraps around them that makes them feel really comfortable, a specific pedal, specific shape that's aerodynamic, the color they want, and they can see in their mind how when the sun shines on it, the glare on the paint and how it reflects back. If they can see all of that and they can hear the sound of the car and how people look at them when they drive the car, all of the above and more, they're more likely to be motivated because their mind's like, that sounds like pleasure, versus previously, we don't know what the outcome is. Like if you and I were to go get food together, right? What's your favorite food?
All of them, all the foods. I don't know, like all that. I don't know what's trendy right now. Oh, like a affogato, like a espresso and ice cream. Let's just go with that.
Okay, espresso ice cream. But if I was just like, oh, let's just go get some food, you might be less interested than let's go get some espresso ice cream. even just that minutely more specific, you get more interested. Same thing with our goals.
It bypasses some of the so-called tiredness or fatigue.
Right. Does it put us on the speedway then to reach that goal? So it's not like I'm just out on the random freeway and I'm going to take this random exit. I'm going to get on the speedway towards my goal.
Bingo.
Okay.
Yeah. So you know where you're going.
Right. This is what a girlfriend and I always say. We're like, if they would just give us a map, if God would just give me a map. No worries.
Stay tuned for part 2 of the Soul Fam podcast interview with William Lam of Upgrade. As is often the case with our high-frequency guests, our frequencies got jammed. We look forward to sharing part 2 with you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Soul Fam podcast. Be sure to tune in to every episode where we dive into a different rabbit hole of the known and unknown to empower you in conscious living and exploration of the greater universe. We hope you leave each episode with a little stardust in your hair and inspiration in your heart. With love from your Soul Fam.